good afternoon. Welcome to BYJU'S exam prep. Welcome to your editorial analysis. Today I know I have been missing for a little while. I hope you can all see me and hear me. Mark, please give me a thumbs up if you can see me and hear me clearly. Quickly, give me a thumbs up if you can see and hear me clearly, then we shall start the class. All right, different day, but same time. I've chosen an article on the United Nations. You know that the United Nations has been in the news lately because of the Israel Hamas conflict and its role. The entire article is about the role of the United Nations. This is something you can expect in CAT, a current event, a table topic, something that is being discussed very often, and lot of articles on that, lot of editorials on that. All right. So shall we start? Okay. As usual, I'll give you about 40 seconds to read the slides. If you can read it faster, very good. If you find that you're not able to read it in the given time, then that's a sign that you should practice speed reading, timed reading, where you keep a watch and you see how much time you take to read an article which is about 500 to 700 words, and then see if with a sense of urgency you can read it faster, because in CAT you cannot take all the time in the world to answer questions. Then you will be left answering only one passage, which is not what we want, right? All right, shall we start? Take your 30 seconds to 40 seconds to read the passage. I'll put the timer on. All right. Shall I move on to the next slide? Have you read it? Have you read the slide? Okay. What does the first slide say? The United Nations is a toothless tiger. In the history of the United Nations, the world is still searching for any war that it has helped stop. Find out what this sentence means. I'm not going to explain it to you. Apart from pedantic calls for immediate ceasefire, what do you think is the meaning of pedantic? There is little the Association of Nations can do. What is the United Nations? It's an association of nations. A lot of nations have come together to form this multinational body. And if the combatants do not wish to heed well-meaning advice, so it is just an advisory body. It cannot do anything more than that. The United Nations does, however, reflect the divisions already etched in this conflicted world. So what is the United Nations? It is showing us the divisions that exist in our world. Even so, Secretary General Antonio Guterres may have crossed a line in recalling the genesis of the coordinated terror attack on multiple places that Hamas carried out with unparalleled show of barbarity. Now, the author believes that the United Nations Secretary General crossed his limit when he said something. Of course, there's a history related to it, as much as there will be to any multilateral movement. Any conflict between nations, when you talk of, there's always a history behind it. When you speak of India, Pakistan, or Iran, Iraq, or Israel, Palestine, there's always a history attached to it. Yet there can be no justification whatsoever for acts of terror, even if the epic suffering of today is a result of historical occupation of places the Palestinians live in. So there is no justification for terrorism, even if you feel that Palestinians are justified in feeling very unfairly treated by history. The way the United Nations Secretary General said it about Palestine, it did sound as if he was justifying Hamas's barbarous acts. So this is the crux of the problem. All right. The UN Secretary General condemned the October 7 attacks on Israel that has brought the region to its current state, teetering on the brink of a wider conflict with Israel facing the prospect of a two-front war. This is what the first uh, slide has said. Now read the second slide, and then again I'll give you 40 seconds to read the second slide. So what does the second slide say? The second slide says that Israel in the present situation may face a two-front war. Enemy is attacking from two sides, not just one person, it's one country or one entity that it is fighting. As Hezbollah's commando force in southern Lebanon is training at the leash while the leadership in Beirut advises restraint. In doing so, while castigating the other side, what is the meaning of this word? For inflicting a collective punishment on the Palestinians. Who is the author referring to? By what does the he stand for? The Secretary General of the United Nations has proved to be less diplomatic and far too political while calling for a humanitarian ceasefire. You are the head of a multilateral body, multinational body. You are not supposed to take sides. Cannot be so political. That's what the author says. Nothing takes place in a vacuum, not even a United Nations meeting, and the right to veto that renders it powerless to exert any of its collective decisions. With the Security Council hamstrung ka matlab totally hampered. Okay, the United Nations General Assembly's non-binding decisions. It can take decisions, but they are not binding on its member states. Can do little when man takes on man and transforms into an animal-like avatar bent on death and destruction. That's what happened, according to the author, in the Israel-Hamas conflict at present or in any conflict. The UN is not going to help end this war. The author is very clear. The UN cannot help end this war. Even the United States, while calling for restraint, uh, as a trickle of hostages are being released by Hamas. So Hamas carried on an attack on Israel on October 7th, and it took terrorists. They say about 700 or 800 terrorists, some say 1,000. They're being released, but a trickle, that means we don't know how many are being released at a time, very few. But the United States has said that Israel will decide for itself when to go ahead with the ground offensive to get at the Hamas leadership. Israel is not going to keep quiet about this. Israel is going to take action, and it's up to Israel. United States has asked for restraint. It's told both sides that look, people on both sides are getting hurt, but it says it's up to Israel. It hasn't said anything else. Therefore, he says, while will reason return in time is the only question. Will both sides in the war, will both the belligerents act reasonably? Will they see sense? That is the only question. And when? But UN politics will not be aiding it. So the author is very clear. If anyone is going to stop the war, it is the two sides involved in the war, not the United Nations. Got it? So you can have a question on the tone of the author. You can have a question on a lot of things about the United Nations, about the Secretary General, about the main point of the passage. Let's see how well you have read the passage and understood it. All right, let's start with question 1. Which of the following best represents the main point of the passage? We've read the passage, started by talking about the war, the attack. Then it said that the United Nations can't do anything. The Secretary General may have crossed his line in saying something that he shouldn't have. Then he mentioned that, this is what has happened. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Uh, the decisions of the United Nations are not binding on the member nations. The Security Council is hamstrung. There is a veto power. So nothing's going to happen. What we are saying is right now the United States has called for restraint. Everybody is asking the parties in the war, the belligerents, to act with restraint. But finally, we have to see when will they see reason and stop this mad war, stop this senseless war. The United Nations can't do anything about it. That's what the author is saying. So, what is the main point of the passage? The United Nations can help avert war if it had more powers. Obviously, the author has seemed to say that the United Nations is powerless. But does that mean the main point is that the United Nations can help stop war if it had more powers? The United Nations has power on paper, but not in reality. Is that what the author is saying? The UN can only offer lip service in calling for an immediate ceasefire, or the ongoing war between Israel and Palestine will inevitably lead to the Third World War. What is the author saying? Option A, B, C, or D? Quickly give me your answers. Let me see your answers quickly before we move on to the next question. Let me see your answers. I'm not able to see the chat very clearly, but yeah, let me see. It did not say that the United, wait, let me get the pen color right. It did say that the United Nations doesn't have the power to stop the war, but it did not talk of if it had the power, what would happen. Didn't go into that realm at all. It has power. It is powerless. It said. It didn't say about reality or on paper. It is powerless. Okay, on paper we do not know anything. So this part is out of scope. It can only offer lip service. So it says it can only call on the nations to stop war. Paying lip service means saying something, not being able to do something, or not meaning. Both meanings are there, but here he means lip service means only can say something, not actually act on it. Therefore, the correct answer is C. All right. Okay, let's look at the next question. What is the tone of the author? Which of the words best describes the tone of the author? What is the subject of the passage? The war, Israel Hamas, a conflict, and the role of the United Nations. So, obviously, the main point seems to be the role of the United Nations. What is the author's attitude about the role of the United Nations? Is he praising it? Is he just objectively saying this, or is he negative about it? He is negative about it. When he is negative about it, what exactly is he saying? Sanguine, sanguinary, pacific, censorious. Censorious comes from the word censure, which means to criticize. So the author's tone is critical. He is saying United Nations doesn't have the power. Not just does it not have the power, the way it is structured, its Secretary General also made lots of, made a, didn't really act very tactfully when he spoke out, when he spoke about the war. He also says that the war may come to an end if both parties, see reason, think reasonably, think of all the price that the people are paying. But it's not because of the United Nations. Therefore, this is the answer. What does sanguine mean? Sanguine means optimistic or cheerful. What does sanguinary mean? The exact word to describe the war. Marked by bloodshed or violent. All right, Pacific. He is not. His attitude towards the war is not that. Towards the United Nations is not that. All right, so the answer is B. Next question. What can you infer from the following line? You see this question, it's a very common question in CAT. They'll give you a few lines from the passage, or they will give you a paragraph. What can you conclude from the first, second, or third paragraph? So here I've given you a few lines. The United Nations does, however, reflect the divisions already etched in this conflicted world. What can you infer from this? About the United Nations or about the world? Whichever. Okay, this is what he's saying. It reflects the divisions already etched in this conflicted world. So first read the sentence, put it in your own words, and then let me know what he meant. The United Nations is an exemplar of unity in diversity. The United Nations is a mirror of the deeply divided world we live in. The UN does not adequately represent all the sections of the world fairly, or the UN should be called divided nations. Instead of being called United Nations, it should be called divided nations. Which of the options is correct? A, B, C, or D? An exemplar means the perfect example of unity in diversity. He hasn't said that. It reflects the divisions in the world. So it is a mirror of the divided world. What is the United Nations? Just a model of the world we are living in. After all, United Nations as members, each of the countries of the world is represented in the United Nations. So when the countries of the world are fighting, the members fight in the United Nations. The United Nations is nothing but a mirror of the world that we are living in. All right. So, of course, from there you can infer that it should be called divided nations, not United Nations, but the author hasn't said it. So, B is the correct answer. All right, it's a mirror of the divided world that we live. Clear? All right. Which of the statements follow from the concluding paragraph of the passage? First, let's see what is the concluding paragraph of the passage. When you have to first know what's the concluding paragraph, so I'll let you read the concluding paragraph of the passage, and then we'll go back to the options. The United Nations is not going to help end this war. Even the US, while calling for restraint as a trickle of hostages are being released by Hamas terrorists, has said that Israel will decide for itself when to go ahead with the ground offensive to get at the Hamas leadership. First point, UN has no role in ending the war. It doesn't have the power. It maybe doesn't even have the intention. He hasn't said it. Second, the United States has called for restraint, but it has said Israel can do what it wants. It has been attacked, so it can start its ground offensive against the Hamas leadership. The last line it says, of course, we are all hoping that will reason return in time is the only question. Will both the countries act reasonably, see things properly? That needs to be answered. What we know for certain is UN politics will not aid it. We got our 4 points, right? That United Nations is not going to help this war. Second, US has told Israel can go ahead with the ground offensive. We are all hoping that when will Israel and Hamas see reason and end the war? These are the three, right? Therefore, what can you conclude from these 3 points? The UN's efforts are only exacerbating the conflict in the Middle East. Exacerbating means to worsen. To exacerbate means to worsen a crisis, worsen a situation. The situation is already bad. The United Nations is only making it worse. All right, has the author said that? The US intervention has helped neither the United States nor the belligerents in the war. The US has said it's called for restraint. The author said it's called for restraint, but it has said Israel can go ahead. So based on this, can you conclude that the US by doing this has it reached a situation when it has benefited neither itself nor the belligerents? Is this a little far-fetched, or can this be inferred? He has not said anything about its interventionism. He said it's called for restraint. And it has told Israel can go ahead. So in a way, it has told Israel, If you go ahead, we are not going to say anything again. So therefore, this cannot be enforced. We can only hope that Israel and Hamas, okay, Palestine also, it is the radical body, act reasonably and end the war. That's the last line. The UN should be disbanded is a sweeping statement. He hasn't said it. He has criticized it, but he hasn't said get rid of it. Maybe in the next paragraph he says it, we don't know. But in this excerpt, he has not said it. So we can conclude. See, I hope you got that right. You did? All right. Next, the very first lines of the passage, the author calls the United Nations a toothless tiger. Correct? The expression toothless tiger is analogous, is similar in meaning, similar in whatever way to which of the following expressions? Is a toothless tiger the same as a paper tiger? Or is it a wolf in sheep's clothing? Is it a cry in the wilderness? Or is a toothless tiger a scapegoat? Option A, B, C, and D. Which of the expressions is similar to toothless tiger? A toothless tiger is an impotent tiger. It can't do anything. Unless it has teeth, it cannot hunt, it cannot kill, which is the same as a paper tiger. It's not a real tiger, so it's powerless. A wolf in sheep's clothing is a deceptive person. It's inside it's a wolf, it's come like a sheep. So it's actually a very dangerous person who looks, so it's a deceptive person. Cry in the wilderness is a futile attempt, a useless attempt. If you cry in the wilderness, in the jungle, when there's nobody, if you ask for help, nobody will hear you. Right? So that's the meaning of cry. A scapegoat is a person who is blamed wrongly for something. When you take the blame, when you're actually not guilty, then you are called a scapegoat. Or if I blame you and make you suffer the consequences for something that somebody else has done, then you are called a scapegoat. All right. So the answer is obviously all right. So far, it's good. All right, let's move to the next question. What does the author imply? Again, indirect question. When the United Nations, when he says the US Secretary General may have crossed a line. So, when he says UN is powerless, even so, the Secretary General may have crossed a line when he said something, right? So, what did he mean by that? That the UN Secretary General should not have expressed his views. The UN Secretary General went outside his sphere of authority in commenting on the war. Is it A or B? Or is it that the UN Secretary General broke the law in giving false assurances? Or is it D? The UN Secretary General overstepped the limit when he indicated his support for one side in the ongoing war. When did he say he crossed a line? Let's go back to the passage. Here he said, here, when Secretary General Antonio Guterres may have crossed a line when, in recalling the genesis of the coordinated terror attack, in saying that the root cause of this terror attack on multiple places with an unparalleled show of barbarity, that its cause was somewhere else. So there is a history to it. Okay, he recalled the history instead of he condemned Hamas. But what did he say? He said that the way he said it. Think of that the Palestinians they attacked, but you know what? Think of the reason why they attacked Israel. So the way he said it, made it sound as if he was justifying Hamas's act. The way he said it, he may not have meant it. So what happened? He may have crossed a line when he said this, because what happened is that his statements prove that he is less diplomatic and far too political while calling for a humanitarian ceasefire. When you're calling for a humanitarian ceasefire, you cannot sit and blame one side even indirectly. What he did was showed his that, that political side of it, and that was not right. Because you're showing that you sympathize with the Palestinians somewhere. Yeah, yeah, of course, it's very bad. But remember, you've also done this. Remember the history. He shouldn't have said that. What did he mean by crossing a line? The answer options, remember, should not have expressed his views. No, should not have expressed his views the way he did it. He should have expressed it in a different way, in a more tactful manner. So he's not saying that the UN Secretary General shouldn't have spoken at all. That's not what the author is saying. He said he should have been a little more tactful. What he said proved to be very tactless, proved to be very political. He went outside his sphere of authority in commenting on the war. He did not go outside his sphere of authority in commenting on the war. He went outside his sphere of authority in saying something about the war, which made it seem like he was taking one side. He was supporting one side rather than the other, or in other words, supporting Palestinians against Israel. So the correct answer is D. He overstepped the limit. He crossed the line. He went outside his sphere of authority when his statement seemed to indicate his support for one side of the war. Therefore, the correct answer is B. A, B, and C are only half correct. He didn't give any false assurance, so C is totally wrong. Okay, the mistake was not on his commenting on the war. That you are the UN Secretary General, you are supposed to make a statement where you call for peace, you call for restraint on both sides. But what he did is, in doing that, he also said something which made it seem like he was supporting the Palestinian cause, and he was blaming the Israelis in some way. That was considered wrong. And what happened as a result was, if you read the newspapers, the whole attention went on what he said instead of on the war and the humanitarian crisis. It became a verbal, war between the United Nations Secretary General and the Israeli representative at the United Nations, where he said, this. So the whole attention was diverted. All right, that all right, good. Next question. Which of the following can be inferred from the opening lines of the passage? What were the opening lines that has been given? So we don't have to go back to the opening lines. The United Nations is a toothless tiger in whose history the world is still searching for any war that it had helped stop. What is the author saying? Read it. It's a toothless tiger. In the history of the United Nations, we are still searching. If you read the history of the United Nations, you will not find, you'll still be searching for an instance of war that it has helped stop. So what is he meaning? Easy. The United Nations has not helped stop any war in the world. The United Nations has a glorious history in ending conflict between nations. There is no documentation. Are we still searching for any war it may have stopped because history has forgotten to document it? Or history writers have been unfair to the United Nations in not mentioning its peacekeeping efforts? These two are long drawn conclusion, extended logic. Basically, the author is very sarcastic about the United Nations. It was created with an objective to end war, to maintain peace between nations. But he says if you read the history, you will be searching, you'll be still left searching for any war. That means basically he's saying it has not really helped stop any war. Okay. C and D are assumptions, which is not correct. Everything is documented. Yeah, the interpretations may be different. Therefore, the answer is A. It is not. According to the author, if you look at the history of the United Nations, you will not find a single war it has stopped. It has not been effective in stopping war against two nations, three nations, whatever. All right. B contradicts what it is saying. C and D are not given in the passage. That's conjecture. All right. Okay. Next question. Which of the following is not true about the United Nations according to the information given in the passage? All right. It does not have any powers to end conflict between nations. Is this true? Second, it's only a tool of powerful nations to impose their will. We have to find out which is not true. That means three are true and one is not. You have to find which one it isn't. Doesn't have any powers to end conflict between nations. True or false? It's only a tool of powerful nations to impose their will on the rest of the nations. Now, your general knowledge about a subject should not interfere with your reading comprehension answers. You should only refer to the information given in the passage. All right. The right to veto renders the United Nations powerless to exert any of its collective decisions. The decisions of the United Nations are not binding on its member nations. Twice in the passage, the author has said the UN decisions are non binding. So D is correct. D cannot be our answer. He says nothing happens in a vacuum. Of course, he says that it is the United Nations is hamstrung. The Security Council is hamstrung because of the right to veto. And the right to veto that the members of the Security Council have makes it powerless. Even if some collective decisions have been taken, the Security Council, any one member or two members veto means say no to the decision, it cannot be taken. So this has also been mentioned. It does not have any powers. This is what he has mentioned. That's why he called it a toothless tiger. So A, C, and D are correct. Now B, he has not said anything about powerful nations imposing their will. It is true that at one point when, so basically the United Nations survives or sustains, all the activities of the United Nations are sustained by donations, contributions of member nations. And the United States at one time had the highest contribution. And it said, since we are contributing the highest, we should have a say in it. So there was a saying at once, the US is the UN and the UN is the US. So when people ask, when other countries are asked to raise their contribution level, like China says, okay, we can contribute more. This when China was doing well, but we need more powers. But this is not given in the passage, so we cannot say it is true. It has not been given in the passage, therefore the correct answer is B. All right. Okay. Next question. What is the meaning of the word Genesis? Genesis means origin, therefore option A is the correct answer. Alright, result, effect, and path are almost opposites. The genesis of a problem is the cause, the origin, the root. Alright, next, what is the meaning of pedantic? It's an adjective for like a pedant, pedantic. But when you call something pedantic, what does it mean? It means dull, it's unimaginative. So all the United Nations is doing is giving pedantic calls for ceasefire. Just make a statement. There's nothing else to it. Right? It is the opposite of innovative and ingenious. Last question of the day. Grammar question as usual. Which of the following sentences is or are grammatically correct? The United Nations is not going to help end this war. Should I say is not going to help to end this war, or is this sentence correct? There is little the UN can do if the combatants do not wish to heed well meaning advice. Is this correct, or should I say there is a little the United Nations can do if the combatants do not wish to heed well meaning advice? Which one is right? The United Nations General Assembly's non binding decisions can do a little when man takes on man and is bent upon death and destruction. Which one of the sentences are correct? A, 1, 2, or 3. Option A says only 1, option 2 says only 2, option 3 says 1 and 3, D says 1 and 2. The UN is not going to help to end this war is the meaning, but you don't have to use the 2 there. It's understood. So sentence 1 is correct. Little and a little. What's the difference? What's the difference between little and a little? Little means almost nothing, close to zero. It has a negative connotation. A little means a small amount, but it has a positive meaning. So here, what do you mean to say? Hardly anything. UN can't do much about it. So they'll say there is little the UN can do. There's hardly anything. You can't do much if two nations are just decided to. They don't listen to your advice. The correct answer is 2. 1 and 2 are correct. Here, what is the mistake? We want little, not a little. All right. So 1 and 2 are the right answers, are the correct sentences. Therefore, my answer is all right. Okay. Hope you. How many questions did you get right? Out of the 11 questions that we had, 5 were based on RC, out of which if you got at 3 or 4, you've done a good job. Out of the 11 questions, if you got at least 9 correct, that means you are set for non-CAT exams as well, because these were questions based on vocabulary and grammar too. All right, so start your CAT preparation. Take a free trial. All right, enroll in our sessions. Look at the toppers last year. We hope to see you here. We have a comprehensive program where we give you classroom sessions, practice questions, topic tests, mock tests. Then you have a learning tablet with recorded sessions. Every program, every batch has this. All right. At 2023 crash course starts from 23rd October 7 p.m. It has already started, obviously. I hope you're attending it. Do log in at 7 p.m. Stay logged in the BYJU'S exam prep channel to watch all our experts help you with your preparation. All India Open Mock is open from 27th to 5th November. Hope you registered and did well in it. Okay, and those of you who haven't yet, do register and take the test. All right, join our social media channels, any or all of them, so you get notifications of all our sessions, all our open mocks, all our YT and app classes. I will see you again very soon in another session. Until then, keep preparing. Take care. Bye bye.